couch. Dog wakes me up at 3 a.m. I'm all set at 4, going back to sleep. Another dog has to wake me up at 4 a.m. Take care of that problem. Almost asleep. It's 10 and 5. The bride needs to get up at 5. The second dog comes in for his actual job. Starts poking my hand to wake me up, to give him permission to go up and wake Debbie up. One of those days. But I feel a lot better than I did the other day, or yesterday even. The stomach was way off. Anyway, what I wanted to do today was cover the following. Ooh, I guess I could turn that light off. There it is. The 7 steps of troubleshooting. Well, this is on my actual computer, and I'm talking to you on my tablet. But I figured, what the heck, let's try this. Now, we'll do this step by step. The first one that you see there is know the system. Well, let's bring you back here for the discussion on, oops, that didn't work. Something did work, but not what I wanted. Okay, know the system. Now, we'll go back and look at that in a second anyway. What did I do with, I put them away. That was dumb. My glasses. Now, there's something in know the system. In other words, you need to be trained. You need to have the book. Read the book, okay? One guy taught me RTFB, and I modified it. Read the fool's book, please. It's important. You like my studio lighting? Let's try that. Anyway, RTFB, read the fool's book. It's you've got to. You have to know it, okay? There's no other way around it. Yeah, those are nasty. Let me go get my other. Those are my backups. They're excellent for this eye, not for this eye. 1.75, 2.5 with a little different, eye injury from way back in high school. Okay, know the system. In other words, study it. You've got the service manual. You need the specs. This is an important step for you guys that are specifically on the road. More important than even in the shop. So what do you mean? When you're on the road, you're not always have the information with you if you don't take it before you leave. If you know the system, you also know what to load for tools. So that's why number 1 is know the system. Now, the other one for me, for you road warriors, that's even more important. What did I? Yes, I did. Confirm 3 things. Okay, before you leave on the road, because this is my favorite thing for the road warriors. It angers service writers. Service managers like it in the end result, but the problem is when you're trying to load up to go, they're always angry you're not gone in 30 seconds. You know what I mean? But know the system, but also confirm the machine. Know the service manuals you're going to have. And the last one is, this is for the new stuff mostly, but are there any bulletins out on that machine? Now, for you guys that are out in the shops out there, that's critical. Now, if you're at home and on the farm or whatever, you may not have access to any of that. But you need to know the system of stuff that you're working on to begin with. So that manual is critical. You can go online here. There's emanuals.com. There's farmmanualsfast.com, gensales.com. There's a bunch of them out there. I think it's Gensales in particular actually has some reprints of IT manuals, but they did a horrible job of putting it together. So you can't read the manual until you buy it, and there's no recourse. So you hope it's dirt cheap. I've got one Ferguson manual that has, in several sections, are exactly the same 2 or 3 pages. It's worthless to me. So I purchased it for nothing. So be careful in Gen Sales. If it's an old IT manual, it's the only one you got, then buy it. But just be careful. Some of those Farm Manuals Fast and Gen Sales occasionally have reprints of the exact manuals from the manufacturer. I say reprints, downloads, scans, whatever you want to call them. So that's important to know the system. Number 2. Now, you've gotten there. Number 2 is confirm the complaint with the owner and or better yet, operator. The complaint's important. This goes to Dave at Dave's Automotive, the 4 C's. And I heard the 4 C's until I was green Anderson Equipment. And I said, oh, you guys shortcut stuff. What do you mean? I said, the original was 7 steps. 4 is pretty chintzy unless you're ignorant. But it is. They whittle it down because to talking to the customer or the poor dumb service writer, he can't write all that technical crap. So into the 4 C's is simple. Complaint, the original complaint, the cause, the correction, and this goes to my step number 7 over here. Confirm that you repaired the thing. And I say that because at Anderson Equipment, those jackass morons that were up, I mean, we're talking the area service rep guys in the state of New York anyway, were idiots. I mean, stupid. You're not even, you start the morning, you're firing the machine up to warm it up to go do some adjustments, and the delivery truck pulls in behind you. Oh, we set that up a week ago. You should have. No, I shouldn't have when you sent me out on the road 3 times. You say, well, you're talking sour grapes, and some of you might be managers here. I'm giving you some clear advice. Don't be stupid. Listen to your people, and if you can't listen to them, replace them. I'm serious. And I don't mean if you can't personally listen to them. I mean you can't listen to them giving you proper information. If you can't trust them, replace them. It'll be a revolving door. It's a revolving door anyway because you're going to get angry and treat them like crap. So, number 1, know the system and get your manuals and bulletins and all that when you're a dealer especially. Number 2, ask the actual operator. Get a clear complaint, what it is. You need to know. And this is where you get the discussion and walk around. Talk with them about when it happens, how it happened, what time it happened, how often has it happened. These are things that you're going to, hello out there. These are things that you're going to work through there with the operator. Occasionally you're going to get a service writer or service manager that has some information that's okay. But if it isn't on the work order, just write down what you can and ignore them. Go talk to the operator and the owner. It's occasionally you find out things from an owner who does operate the machine, if you're on a farm especially, or some of the, what do you call them, landscaping guys and lawn maintenance. Sometimes the owner is the operator or the owner does operate. In other words, there might be a problem and they're intelligent enough that there's a problem with the machine, they switch so that the owner can go through the machine while his crew keeps on going. So those things are important. Number 1, know the system and get your information. Number 2, the machine information that you're working on, disposition and such. And number 2, ask the actual operator and find out. Get the discussion, walk around, look at it, and see the condition the machine itself is in. Number 3, operate it, or if you can't operate it, because I ran into that once with a, what was it, a Model 500, 550, or 600. It was a Ingersoll Rand drill from Atlas Copco that was built by a Japanese company. There were 30 switches and controls through the machine. He says, here, you want it? No. We were able to figure the problem out. Well, every so often I smack that wall there and that whole control box. There was a control box up there. There was like half a dozen to a dozen. I forgot what it was, 6 to 8 solenoids and wiring harnesses and stuff all splayed out. I got you. So that's when you watch what they're doing and how it operates, and you figure it out pretty quick. So know the system, number 1. Number 2, ask the operator to get the discussion, walk around, pull your dipsticks. Number 3, watch it in operation if you can. You know, if it's in bad enough shape that things are really, don't. But now also when you're in the operation mode, the thing's running, you can also take the time to confirm or look for your fault codes and such. Not necessarily definitions yet, but get all your fault codes. Because in most of your machines today, you get a definition of the fault code with it in the machine, but not all of them. Especially when you get some of the older machines that have 3, 4, 5, and 6 different controllers in there that you have to go through and read. Those are the times that, like some of these stupid case tractors in New Holland, just get what you can with the operator and the owner and then get them away as far away as humanly possible, because you're going to have the book open fumbling through the list of controllers to get the code, and each controller has the same number code with a different aspect. Yeah. So that's why you want to confirm all of that. Confirm the operation, confirm the complaint, mechanically, physically on site. Number 4, now that you've got there, you have fault codes, you've operated it, you know how your oil, sometimes transferring oil, that kind of thing, low coolant, low oil, you've got all that figured out all the way on through on your walk around. Now you're going to sit there and list possible causes and actually look up your fault codes. Now, some of you are going to say number 2 is where you should check your fault codes. Yeah, I don't care which step you do. That's something you should do early on before you even operate the machine. But this is when it's at the critical stage. You got all your fault codes. You're starting to list your definitions and go through them into the troubleshooting charts. And the other one is you're also going back, and once you've listed them, hardwire or take a picture of it or downloaded them, depending on what type of system you have, that you erase them completely if you can fully operate the machine, but also erase them completely for the repair. Now, some of them you can't, if it's active, you can't. Yes, I know. That's what the point I'm getting to. And in some cases, as in Komatsu they had hard codes and they had fault codes. Or hardware codes, the actual machine stuff. Then they had the software codes and the electrical and the software systems and the sensors and such. In other words, if it overheats, hydraulics, ding, and that stays there permanently. You change the count in your list. The other one, overheating here, and some other different parts of the system, sometimes even low pressure that can show up as a standard software fault code will show up over here as a hardware code because they're saying that this sensor is accurate and we're going to log it over here. So go through your list. Usually in the Komatsu's -8, -10, -11s, the hardware code wasn't that long compared to the rest of it. But it gave you an idea that it was hard printed in, that if the machine or hydraulics or something else overheated, overpressured, over this, over that, it was a permanent code that couldn't be erased. And you could see that, hey, look, maybe over here the code showed up 20 times. Yeah, but because it takes 3 events in a row in a particular time frame to give you that code, over here it might have logged 120 times. Rare, but you'll see discrepancies that wake your eyeballs up. So that's why you're listing possible causes, and you've got the machine. Now it's yours. So when you're listing possible causes for one thing, because you're trying to get to number 5, you're trying to reach a conclusion, whittling down from there, which comes to number 6. Now you're actually doing your hardware troubleshooting. So you're listing possible causes, going all the way through it. You've got your separate lists, your fault codes of what's going on, and possibly troubleshooting and repair with your codes. And then over here, you're starting to get your gauges involved as well to go along with it. What's the fault code? What's the confirmation for it? Maybe it's even going through the list, your monitoring list, and watching it in the actual monitor in the list, in the machine itself. Okay, let me try that again. You've got to list possible causes. You have your fault codes, and you've seen the definition of the fault codes, and now here you're breaking it down into what the possible causes are. So you could have 30 fault codes in some cases if it'll store that many. Then you look at how many of them are old. This is where you start whittling things down. Number 4, you're listing possible causes, meaning you've got all those fault codes, you start scratching them off all the way down through. This one was 100 hours ago, this one was 200 hours ago, this one was 1,000 hours ago, because the operator doesn't have availability usually to erase them. So they're in there. That's why you list them, find out what they are in your list and how far long ago they were, start scratching them off. And then you come down to, usually within a 10-hour span, you'll come up with 1 or 2 codes and you'll be able to whittle it from there. But occasionally you'll get some of those that they all seem to have. This one had 20 codes. 2 or 3 of them showed up at the exact time, the next code or the following code. You have 2 codes, 3 codes, 5 codes that might have a similar time frame. This is where you're starting to list possible causes, coming all the way down. So then you're troubleshooting. So number 5, and this is kind of a split up because they're doing it together. Number 5 is reach a conclusion. What is the most logical from your list? What is the common thread that you're going to be looking at? Then takes you to number 6. And now you're pulling it out. You're pulling out your gauges and you're going right at the machine to actually take your conclusion that you had, which, trust me, not every machine has a conclusion. you'll have 1, 2, 3 conclusions, and sometimes all 3 are correct. Now, there's multiple trouble. Well, list them. You're out in the field, the boss ain't there. List your conclusions, because you may find out I have a problem here. You repair the problem, but it doesn't, that problem. Code's gone, but it doesn't fix the situation with the machine. In other words, a lot more is involved than what you think. I'll give you an example after a while. So now you're going through your troubleshooting repair, but they usually call this one testing and adjusting, also in the Komatsu manual. So you're going through testing and adjusting, trying to remove the problem if it's something simple. If something's out of spec, put it back in spec. You go, yeah, but that doesn't have anything to do with, no, it might not. But it also might. So you're here to get the machine in spec if you can. In the ag circumstances, that's not, you don't have so many related, how can I say it, systems like you do in an excavator. That's a different world. But the tractor is actually more complicated when you get into the computer systems. But still, you're in troubleshooting and repair, trying to repair the things you need to get to the final that you're looking for. So that's number 6, troubleshooting and repair, testing and conclusions, and adjusting. Now, when you've come to that, you've done your repair, and you think you've got it, you've got that 1, 2, or 3, or everything wiped out as you've gone through the steps. And this is the longest one of the bunch, because now you're going for parts, if necessary, filters, oils. You might just get onto a machine that you look at it and say, like one guy told me years ago, he says, sometimes you just do a service to back the customer off, and sometimes the service itself takes care of the problem. Well, he was 25% right, but no. That was one of those he used to do to stall for time. Don't do it unless you need to. Or if the service is well out and it has something in the system that's a failure, it's an actual hardware problem with your driveline, with your hydraulics, or your engine systems or cooling systems, any of that, your air conditioning systems, whatever you're chasing in those, then yes, do a service on it while you're searching for the repair. And you can tell them, well, if I go through a full service, I'll be able to have access to what I'm doing here. And we'll go from there. Yep, that would make sense. And then the last one is the famous one that Dave's Automotive out there in Utah harps on constantly, and he is correct. Number 7 is your repair is done, or you repeat it. In other words, confirm the repair. That is one in the 4 C's that's actually perfect and accurate. The confirmation of the repair. Then not a fix, a repair. If you got a fix and it's working, get out of there. I'm saying that because of the ag guys and the small time excavating operators. There's some of them that they just want the thing to move, and you make it move and you're gone. They'll call you later, but remember documentation. So let's go over this again, and let me switch you around here. Now, this is what I wrote up many years ago. Oh, that's not too good, is it? So know the system, all right? Know what you're working on. Know the machine. And also, like in the case of construction equipment, what's your dash number? What's your arrangement number, especially in engines? That's when it gets important. Try and get this up here so you can see. There we are, starting to get somewhere. So know the system, confirm the machine, the manuals, the bulletins, all the information you can get your hands on. Ask the actual operator. Do a discussion with them and walk around the machine. Operate it, or sit back and watch the operation. Pull your fault codes to confirm what the operator's complaint is. List the possible causes. This is where you define your fault codes and look into your troubleshooting and repair. While you're doing that, sometimes that alone will whittle things down. Number 5, you're going to reach a conclusion of some sort. Okay, now this comes under what's the cause. Well, I've got it split up here because that's how I was trained years ago. You're going to have number 4 here, and 5 is where what are your causes to the complaint. But that also goes here. You're trying to split it up because you're in a technical sense here. You don't have somebody telling you what to fix. You're trying to figure it out. So once you reach that conclusion through that list, then you're going to go through your troubleshooting, repair, your testing, your conclusions, and your adjustment. And then at the end, you're confirming your repair. And one of the things that gets left out with the systems is, especially in ag and others, and in some of the cars, but cars seem to have a little bit more information available to them. For us in the field, even in the small engine stuff. Notice I put down here, repeat. No, got to switch this around. Remember earlier I said something about continuing, where you may have three separate problems that all add up to the same malady on the machine. They may have overlooked one or two things and kept right on going, and the fault codes have been there for hundreds of hours in some cases, and suddenly it gets so bad they call you. That's why I say repair or repeat. That doesn't mean you failed. In fact, you might have done very well, very excellent, found the problem, but you didn't find the problem yet because it's a combination of failures. A perfect example I'll give you is a D155AX-5 Komatsu dozer, and this is 75,001 and up. In other words, a later serial number of the -5 series. And I remember it specifically because I spent 1,000 hours on that thing doing repairs. Easy. And a lot of them were related to the fact that it was in a cat union shop, and they tried to destroy the machine to get a Caterpillar. That's no lie. That came right from the union steward himself, who was trying to talk them out of it. But because they were in a solid union, they couldn't get the guys fired. Only one guy could operate the machine regularly. So it came up with the thing had codes coming out the wazoo, and the one that was consistent was overheating, and that was just, they were screwing up, but the problem was we had a maintenance contract. So I had to go up and clean the radiator out, spending a minimum of 2 hours. And later on, what their famous thing to do was go down there with a fire truck type of wash setup, wash the machine off, and then blow a 2.5 inch straight into the radiator for a while, and then leave it soaking wet, and sometimes fire it right back up. And that stuff would sit in there like concrete, and then they'd call me to come down there and clean it out after a week later of heating and baking. So what would happen? The thing would overheat, it would go into a limp mode and a derate mode. And then they'd call it. Well, because it went into such a fast derate mode. One time what had happened was it went into a fast derate with a loose alternator belt, which changed the voltage and spiked it between 12 and 16. Uh-oh, boys are home. Hi, guys. And then when it did the spike, I had problems with controller powers for the transmission and the hydraulics. I had power problems in the engine controller. This isn't an older common rail system. And I ended up with pressure problems in the steering system. I ended up with pressure problems in the hydraulic and the transmission spikes. And it was incredible the number of codes that I had, that I finally came down to one thing, and they just said, you know, every one of these controllers has a power problem. I pulled the side panel open and found a loose alternator belt, and the guys knew it was loose, but they said, you service it, we don't. They walked away. Tightened up the alternator belt, blew out the radiator, and sent it back to service. But before that, the boss says, well, you better take care of all these other codes. So I did. Service the steering filters, change your oils, got it through a service. Nothing seemed to actually come down to a certain point. Erased all the codes, found that alternator belt, cleaned out the radiator, and everything that caused the derate disappeared. So there wasn't a sudden shock. There wasn't a sudden problem with the alternator. With the engine slowing down so fast, the alternator couldn't keep up on the loose belt. Oh, there's a lot to it. So that's why I said I was going to give you that description later on of why sometimes you see the word repeat. You're chasing a list of trouble that's actual problem, but it has a common source. That the transmission and the hydraulics and the actual engine itself didn't have any problem at all, or the fuel system. None of them actually had a problem. It was all an electrical flashover from poor maintenance and an overheat. So that's why I'm leaving you with the 7 steps. Do with them what you want. Time for me to get out. See you later.